I am very excited for this match of StarCraft 2. It's time for a best of 3 of Terran versus Zerg between two absolute legends in the StarCraft community. When they first, well, got good at the game, they played against each other pretty much every single week. But these days, them playing against one another is quite a rare occurrence. Now, both of them are now previous world champions of StarCraft 2, even though they're still in their early 20s. Spotting right here, in the top left, playing with the blue Terran pieces, and actually... well, I said previous world champions, but no, this man is the current world champion of StarCraft 2, and he might just be able to go back-to-back with the way that he's been playing as of late. Just looking on absolute fire, we have none other than Clem. His opponent, all the way in the opposite corner, playing with the red Zerg drones. Representing Basilisk, it is not Serral, however. We have none other than Reynor. Of course, Serral's teammate. Likewise, an absolute legend though. He ended up winning the World Championships back in 2021. He would love to be able to win as well this year around, all the way over in Riyadh. Both of them will be there. Both of them are now qualified for that particular tournament. And that is always nice to see, right? Because, well, this year, it does feel like everything comes down to these couple of months. All of the pro gamers, they were kind of wondering whether or not we were gonna get a professional season in 2025. At least even remotely similar to what we've had in the past. And for a long time, it was kind of like, maybe we do, maybe we don't, maybe we do. And then bam, everything gets announced and it all comes down to a few months really only. And you have to be in shape immediately. Now, Clem, after winning the World Cup last year in August, I want to say, he did not take a break. So it's very common for pro gamers to take a break, especially after a big tournament that they practice for. From what I've heard, Clem only took a couple of days off. Just hung out with some, I guess, family members and just relaxed for a little bit. He took a short little vacation, but that's it. He basically went straight back to work, and he's been competing in essentially every single online tournament since. And Clem has been accumulating a ton of wins. It's a few $100s here, a few $100s there, and over time, it certainly does add up. He's in shape, he's very good. Now, Reynor, he did certainly take a break. At the beginning of the year, I did see some of Reynor's games, and I wasn't all too impressed. He was playing a lot of League of Legends, and from what I've heard, he's actually gotten very good at League of Legends in a short amount of time, which is always nice to see. Either way, he decided to take a little bit of a break from StarCraft, and it did take him a moment to once more get back into the swing of things. Clem starting off with a single Zergling kill here, despite the opponent going for, well, 6 defensive links. We have a quick little Reaper opener, though. Factory now on the back of this. We may see some add-ons here in just a moment. First map, by the way, is Maganatha. And it does mean that we have a very long rush distance. So going for this aggressive of an opener here as Terran is always a little bit funky on a map that is quite long. Just takes a while for units to get across the map. Reynor did not really overextend, though. He's going to be able to plant down the third hatchery with relative ease. And I don't believe there's enough Reapers to really shut it down. Although we do have a 4th one coming in right now. Yeah, maybe. He decides to start it up since the Reapers are playing with the Queens. Throwing down a couple of grenades, making them jump around and enjoy. It's not 4 Reapers, actually. I thought for a second you were a Reaper too, dude. I saw your little blue box on the minimap and I thought you were a Reaper. But you were just a Marine marching around looking for a lucky Overlord kill. Fair enough. With 3 Reapers, you're not going to be able to kill this. And obviously he knows that Zergling speed is not going to be too far off. So all of this is fine. All of this is fine here for Reynor. Losing a single Zergling here and taking a bit of damage. By no means the end of the world, as long as it's nothing critical. Alright, so we have a bunch of Zerglings available right now to go across the map with. Reapers have been making their way back home, and they're going to be joined right here by those Hellions. Third command center, though, inside of the main base in the meantime here for Clem. Ooh, good shot. I mean, I honestly... so I don't know the results of this particular best of 3 series, right? If I were to make a guess, though, Clem just is looking like an absolute monster. His Terran versus Zerg is probably the best, like, in all of StarCraft. Like, not even just, you know, Terran versus Zerg specifically, but his versus Zerg is probably #1 in the world. I'm not exactly sure who would even really be able to, yeah, pull the rug out underneath him. Clem just looking so incredibly powerful, and Zerg players in general do seem to be struggling a little bit more. Clem really is the perfect package, though, when it comes to playing Terran right now. He's just got phenomenal micro, phenomenal macro, perfect timing attacks. There's really no mistakes. Although I say that as the man hits a small little supply block, it seems. No, actually he didn't. He already had another depot finishing up her. At the very least, we didn't really see him not be able to produce units there for a little bit. But Clem really is incredibly sharp. He doesn't really overextend. He doesn't have any early game weaknesses with his base defense. His SimCity is always going to be on point, and looks like actually he decided to land a little supply depot head, so he did hit a small little supply block. Either way, the man is strong. He is really the only Terran player that seems to regularly be able to take series off of Serral. So we now have some nice zoning here as well. He's hunting for the drones, does not overextend here. One of the queens a little bit overextended, then immediately he pounces, but not going to be able to shut it down. Single queen here does fall to the Liberation Circle, fair enough. And I feel like if Clem is playing cleanly, like if Clem is playing like he has been playing over the last year, I really don't think Reynor is going to be the favorite in a series like this, even though Reynor is an absolute monster, and Reynor is one of the absolute fastest players in the world. That is where, in my mind, Reynor oftentimes wins games. So he's incredibly quick. Generally speaking, APM-wise, we're talking 5 up to like 600 average actions per minute. But Clem is the fastest Terran player on the planet, you know? So you can't really rely on your just mechanical speed here as Reynor to obtain the victory. He can sometimes overpower other Terran players just by being able to out-multitask them, but I think against somebody like Clem, it'll be a really tall order. This is something, though, that he's very well known for, right? Zergling run-bys. Reynor does this time and time again, and it does force the Terran player at the very least to sit back for a little bit, rally some of his reinforcements at home. Clem likes to send all of his units across, but he's always going to be forced, I think, to keep a couple of packs of units here and there. So far, though, good game here for Clem. Not really losing a whole lot. Just that Liberator, 2 SCVs, not the end of the world. 4 Overlords and a Queen. It's by no means a disaster here for Reynor, but it isn't entirely clean. And if we look right now at the creep spread, or maybe the Lecter off, Reynor really has been pushed into his starting quadrant. We're 7 minutes into the game already, and he's barely got the creep outside of the natural expansion. And this is something Clem does. Clem's momentum-based playstyle is probably his strongest play. He's very good at piling on the pressure, layering it all up. Just like this, he's going to be able to get a hatchery kill here too, and then he drives in on the left side of the map, snipes a couple of those units, now goes after the roaches too. This is Clem in a nutshell. This is now, for all intents and purposes, forcing Reynor into almost like an all-in. He's just getting out-targeted, like, he just gets out-multitasked here. And it's not that Reynor's playing poorly. It's just that Clem is playing out of his mind good. Oh no! Another hatchery kill. Ugh. Yeah. And now the snowball has started rolling down the hill. Clem is starting it off with just a little pile, but he is going to be able to layer up this aggression with ease now. Supply-wise, I mean, it is pretty much even, despite the fact that Zerg is Zerg, and despite the fact that the Zerg is playing roaches. Roaches are a pretty supply-heavy unit, and one other big thing to note with roach openers in particular is that they're really designed so you don't take damage in the early game. That is the entire goal with a roach-based start. You're not really supposed to be taking damage. Now, this is obviously still something that Clem could lose, right? With a couple of well-placed biles or maybe an overextension here from Clem, this is still something he can certainly let slip through his fingers, and I feel like moving out right now is one of the ways in which you can let this slip through your fingers. Maybe a little bit overconfident, because the Zerg has been making non-stop army for a while, and you know what? This may just be exactly what Reynor needs. He's going to be able to grab a bunch of those kills. He is forced to back up right now again, though, because his little hit squad from the early game is still driving around and using their little grenades here to force the Zerg player back every single time. Clem apparently not deterred. He really wants to make sure that this Zerg is never going to get up to a 4th base. Okay, well, this is going to be a more successful assault with the siege tanks. Even though they will all die, those Marines are still having a grand old time. An absolute bloodbath there so far. So what we have ultimately here is a Terran player with a 4th command center around the same time as the 4th base here for the Zerg. And that is never really supposed to work out like that for a Terran. 2-2 is coming up here as well, significantly before the Zergs. Yeah, Clem is just an absolute monster. And he does this better than any other Terran. It's so easy to overextend, and it looked like it for just a little bit. But Clem is just standing his ground. Man with gun, always good. But the reason why it's good in this instance is that he had such a phenomenal beginning, right? It's little bits of damage here and there accumulating over time. And he is just not gonna let go. In the meantime, Planetary Fortress is being set up on the other side of the map. The clock is ticking as well for those 2-2 upgrades, which are going to make this Terran army substantially better. Now a bunch of Widow Mines are also joining in the fray. Man, it looks like absolute hell to play against Clem. What do you even do? Because he's so aggressive and he's constantly in your face, he is... I mean, unless he missed micros, right? He should never really be... So if you play like this, Zerg is never going to be able to set up a counter-attack. If you send Zerglings across the map right now, you will get overwhelmed. So one way, I guess, to deal with the run-bys on your side of the map is by just being relentlessly aggressive on the other side of the map. GG. Pretty much a perfect game here for Clem. Next up, we find ourselves on Ultralisk, and apparently Clem... What? Keyboard switch to English, sorry? No, that would be a disaster. We don't want that. Oh no, is Clem an Azerty user? I have never thought about that. In France, they generally use a different keyboard layout. Rather than QWERTY, they tend to use Azerty, right? I think it's... Oh no. Oh no! Clem, I was just ready to hype you up some more! But everybody knows that QWERTY is the way to go, right? Actually, in the Netherlands, we also have like a weird keyboard layout that is specifically for Dutch, although it still starts with QWERTY. We have like this like oversized enter key and a bunch of other things, like the short shift on the left. I don't use that. I tend to use the US international layout. US layout OP. Anyways. Ooh, quick Roach Warren here for Reynor. Reynor wants to go for a cheeky push. Yeah, look at that. This is a Roach Warren that is hidden in the most obvious location possible. So Clem is not gonna see unless he marches up the ramp, but it's still like literally part of the outer wall. Which feels really stupid, but sometimes hiding your stuff in the most obvious location is actually the way to go. Now this is a very quick Roach Warren together with a lair, and I did see a drone move on over towards the third as well. Okay, maybe Reynor believes he's been spotted. Yeah, he's decided to skip out on Zergling speed, so you do need a fast Roach Warren, but this one feels really quick to me. Either way, Clem is just looking around the map, making sure that there's nothing hiding on his side of the map, and we've got ourselves a third command center inside of the main base once more. But much like that fourth base in the previous game, this third base right now of the Terran is so much quicker, right, than the, well, equivalent on the other side of the map. Reynor, okay, he goes for the +1 armor research. Lair right now is done. Where do we go from here? He's got all the gases taken in the main. Roach speed. Do we go for like a Nidus network? Do we just go like Roach Ravager Nidus? If he wanted to go Spire, he would have already planted it down. So, yeah, Reynor certainly has something aggressive in mind right here. And Clem knows it, right? So he just checked. He saw the timing of the opponent's third. So he knows that something fishy is going on, which means that we are focusing a lot more on the base defense. Could make a bunker. I wouldn't mind seeing a bunker or two, because at this point we're in a situation where Clem could actually just lose like 20 SCVs and still be fine. Either way, he doesn't know if this is just like a delayed third, right? There's always a chance here for Terran that Zerg is just playing a bit of a cheeky one. They just delayed their expansion. They saw you going double Rex, so maybe they just delayed it a little bit more than they really need to. But it looks to me like we're just gonna go good old Roach +1. This is baby's first timing attack. If I ever have kids that want to play StarCraft, you know, this is the build order I would teach them. Maybe I would go with the +1 missile equivalent, though, because it's a little bit better across the board. Against, well, also Protoss, also against Zerg. Either way, yeah, Reynor needs to do some sort of damage here soon. This attack here from Clem is wild. Oh my god, he actually pulled up at the perfect moment. Oh, Clem. Wow, he actually didn't know what he was playing against, but he countered that absolutely perfectly. 8 roaches for 12 marines is a banger of a trade. So he actually arrived across the map before any of the medevacs could catch up with those marines, meaning that the marines marched by themselves. It's technically a very dangerous play, but I think, yeah, through like the process of elimination, right, he probably just had a potential list of strategies from the opponent in his head, and he knew that this would be the time at which +1 armor finished up. I mean, Reynor just had basically his roach count cut in half right before the important upgrades kicked in. Oh, I actually never set the scoreboard. My bad. Anyways, perfect timing right there for Clem, but still, he needs to be careful. Yeah, he did lose a whole lot of marines in the process, and these couple of units on the other side of the map have successfully denied mining over at the 3rd. It looks to me like Reynor, maybe the original plan was to play this, well, very aggressive timing attack. I think he's basically signing himself up right here for a much more scrappy game. So rather than Clem being able to get into the flow, right, of just constantly doing the non-stop aggression that he's so very fond of, now Clem is in this weird spot where he doesn't really know exactly what the Zerg is going for, and you can't really figure out exactly what the Zerg is going for. Do you expect it's going to be like a big push? Is Zerg still just making non-stop roaches? How many workers does the Zerg player truly have? Because you have seen a bunch of drones at the 3rd, but really not that many. Normally this would be a very late saturation on the 3rd, but because Terran hasn't saturated their 3rd either, yeah, Reynor just keeps running around the map and utterly confusing Clem. Okay. Well, he's decided to go for a few infestors. Zergling speed starts up. 2nd evolution chamber together with the +2 carapace? This is a very odd game here by Reynor. Yeah, he keeps on faking it. So I think the entire premise here for the Zerg after the early game, well, roach losses, is just to make this game as weird for the Terran as possible. The most dangerous thing an RTS player needs to do sometimes is think while they're playing the game. RTS players hate thinking, dude. Oh, nice fungal. Beautiful fungal. Clem thought he could overstay his welcome there and, well, maybe catch those roaches out of position, but that is a very nice start to a good fight for Reynor. Yeah, because I think he could go across the map right now if he wanted to. I mean, there is this... okay, yeah, there is this little group of siege tanks set up. Genuinely, though, a lot of StarCraft players like to get into this flow state, right? Where you do the thinking outside of the game, maybe by looking at the replay, and you try to lean on your past games for experience, right? So you've been in this situation before, you've considered in the past, okay, this is what I do in this situation, so therefore that is what I decide to go for in this particular game. But if you are Clem right now, there's about a 0% chance you've seen this game before from Reynor. It just doesn't really line up. Nothing here is particularly ordinary, and it's one of those threats that I think might actually be better against one of the top level Terrans than it would be against like your average Grandmaster Terran, because there's a good chance that Clem is scouting around and he's looking, okay, I need to like be very deliberate with everything that I do, and ultimately it means that all of his follow-ups here are quite late. I mean, it's not incredibly late, but if he would have just autopiloted into, well, 4cc for example, or he would have just autopiloted into his normal game, he probably would have been fine. Another nice fungal here on the right side of the map, man. This is looking quite nice here for Reynor, but he does need to make a transition. Now, the transition is going to be into Ultralisks. Do I need to share with you my thoughts about Ultralisks? Probably not. I think they're pretty garbage. Although, we have seen them be reasonably effective as of late with Parabomb. Parabomb is nice. Well, not with Parabomb, but especially with Infestors. Fungal growth seems to be a prerequisite right now to just get Ultralisks to work. Clem is trying to get his momentum rolling, right? You can kind of see that he's trying to achieve what he did in the previous game. Oh, did we snipe down one of the Vipers? 2 of the Vipers? Okay, one of them goes down. He's trying to start up the momentum-based play, but so far he's not really getting the ball rolling. Difficult unit composition here though for Reynor is what he's ultimately arriving at. We go into the Baneling Nest. Roaches are really just a stepping stone here to go into Ultraling Bane, Infestor, Viper. Ravagers will probably be around though for a while longer, and they kind of require an extra control group for spellcasting. Or, well, at least Corrosive Biles. You can keep them on the control group with the Lings and the Ultras, I suppose, but it does make the whole game a little bit more chaotic, and it doesn't really... So that's my main concern here with Reynor. This opening from him and his follow-up right now, it doesn't really lead anywhere. Like, we don't really have anything that is like... Most StarCraft strategies out there lead towards a certain attack. This is not Reynor really setting himself up for any particular big push. It kind of looked like it, right? If you were... Oh. Gets it. It kind of looks like it if you're the Terran player here, because you looked at the strategy, you're like, okay, it's a late third base. It kind of looks like he might be aiming for something like that. Fungal? Nope. Infestor gets sniped before it can. And in my mind, right, if we're playing a passive game, it means that we're ultimately arriving in the late game. And Zerg players in general don't really like playing the late game that much. It's not like Clem shies away from it, right? Clem already building up the command centers. He's got 3 of them coming up. Without a fungal here, I think that this Terran army can kite for days. Some corrosive balls, though, onto the siege tank are really nice. Parasitic bombs here as well on the... Metavex is great, though. Metavex have 150 HP, so we do have a nice little push here in the top left. Man, Clem's so good with the multitasking. They have 150 HP. Parabomb deals 120 damage, so you can almost kill a Medevac with 1 Parasitic Bomb. Obviously, with this non-stop aggression that Clem likes to go for. We do see a lot of Medevacs. So lowering the count, always beneficial. Good splitty right there against the Widowmine. Okay. Ghosts, though, are now coming up. Personal Cloaking also coming up here for those Ghosts. Ooh, good snipe here by Clem. He shuts down expansion after expansion. Yeah, the snipes are gonna be powerful. Oh, man. These fungals. Those fungals might just be able to save Reynor. Keep in mind, he hasn't really gone across the map yet. Very unlike Reynor, he hasn't even seen the opponent's 3rd and 4th. He knows they're there. Ooh, so risky. Gets an abduction right there on one of the Ghosts. Can we see some EMPs? No, we do not go for the EMPs. Clem, honestly being a little overly greedy here, lining up those snipes. Ultras are trying to break through the natural. One of them has moved on over towards the 3rd, together with a couple of Zerglings in the mix too. Those Zerglings are putting in a ton of damage as well. 7 additional Ultras right now on the back of this. Okay. Really the first time Reynor goes across the map. And he gets a lot of damage done. Nicely done. Nicely done here. Those Ghosts did not really achieve as much as they could have, though. I really think if he could have gone for the EMP on the Vipers first and then dedicated himself to the snipes. Instead, he must have rapid-fired the snipes off and, well, all of the Ghosts were preoccupied. Basically, the snipe ability, it takes about a second and a half or so to channel. And if the Ghost takes any damage while the unit is channeling, it gets halted. So if you take damage while you're sniping, which takes like a second and a half, like I said, it gets interrupted entirely. And of course, abductions do count as an interruption. Taking any damage, yeah, it's a little bit annoying there for the Terran. And ultimately it allowed the Zerg there to break through. Now, we still have a lot of command centers. Couple SCVs trying their best. He had one SCV hiding inside of the planetary. It looks like it will keep it alive. I think maybe he's scared. Okay, well, ultimately he's gonna be able to continue flooding towards the main base now, even as we have the 3rd also getting overwhelmed. The skirmish in the far bottom right is nice, but I am a little bit concerned for the current state of the main. If you have units inside of the main like this, they're gonna, well, kill all of the units that pop out of the production structures. Clem trying to go for a counter-attack, but he cannot get the job done, and Reynor obtains the victory. Strange game. Yeah. That was a bit of an odd game. Running a little bit of an ad break. So hopefully we don't get any ads during the next game. I feel like pro players need more than 10 control groups. Well, pro gamers are still limited with the amount of hands that they have, dude. 10 control groups is a lot of control groups. Hero needs like 2. I wish it was joking, but I'm pretty sure Hero only ever uses 2 control groups. Loco is lost after seeing Ultras win. I mean, we saw Ultras win this game, yes, but also it was a misplay from Terran, more so than the Ultra being good. Maybe I'm just very biased, deck now, I don't know. Alright, next up. Ultra with caster support are Awk. Yeah. Clem is bad. Terrible player. Hot garbage. Alright, let's see. And that means it all comes down to Tokamak. Final game of this. Cut it out! Editor Loco from the future! Cut it out! I might forget. And that means it all comes down to Tokamak. Final game in this best of 3 series, and, well, small little spoiler alert, I suppose. This is the game that a lot of you reached out to me about, because apparently it's amazing. So, you know, I figured I may as well cast the whole series, but apparently this game right here on Tokamak is phenomenal. So I'm very excited to find out what exactly is so cool about it. Either way, so far. I mean, I like casting series as well, even when people suggest like an individual match, right? I like casting the entire series because the series ultimately tells a story. So what have we learned so far? Well, game number 1, Clem is too freaking good at StarCraft. That's what we've learned. And even though it's only like a 1% advantage here and there, it was more than enough to effectively destroy Reynor by like minute 10. Reynor really didn't stand much of a chance in a straight-up game. Obviously, that was just a single game as far as the sample size goes, so maybe we can't really draw conclusions. But it did seem to me that Reynor somewhat agreed, because in game number 2, he decided to play one of the weirdest and wildest early games that you can go for. Ultimately forcing Clem to go into that mass command center style, and then Reynor was like, haha, I'm gonna hit before all of those command centers really come into play. It did require a little bit of miscontrol right there from the Terran with the Ghost in particular, and the Ultras got more damage done than I think they were really supposed to. But, you know, long story short, we went from a very clinical game to an extremely scrappy game. And now we are on Tokamak. I think in a straight-up match, Reynor is not going to enjoy the game as much as he did, well, in game number 2. So far, Clem is starting this off in a very normal way, at least for Clem. So, it's a triple CC opener with Heli and Banshee. This is the style that Clem once upon a time really popularized, although I don't think we can really say that he's the one that, like, invented it. Right? Like, it's one of those strats that just has accumulated over time. But Clem played this basically exclusively in Terran vs. Zerg for a long time. He started mixing it up again, but this is his bread and butter. Like, this is his go-to, and the go-to of most Terran players out there right now that like going for macro games. Okay, nice little Evo chamber block there. Making it impossible for those Hellions to drive by. Okay. Cloaking field coming up for the Banshee too, so it's going to be double Banshee. What's nice about this strategy for Terran is that it doesn't really have any weaknesses. Assuming you micro well, you can't really die to anything. Now, that is the big assumption. Lucky for us, Clem is capable of doing it. Sadly for you, you probably aren't. Ha! Oh well, oh well. Maybe just stick to the 2cc 111 into a third base instead. Anyways. Maybe you're really good at the game, I don't know. But this is a difficult build for Terrans to play. Especially if Zerg decides to be aggressive, right? So if you go up against like a Roach all-in, or like a Roach Ravager Zergling Flood type of thing, or maybe like Quick Nidus or whatever, this is a difficult build to start off with the Terran, but the top level Zergs have learned over the years that somebody like Clem is pretty much, well, unbeatable in the earlier stages of it. Now he's mixing it up a little bit with this. I was gonna say, that was an invitation and a half right there by Reynor. I really like that Reynor did not jump the gun on that surround. Oh, that was really nicely handled there by the Italian Zerg. He's like, oh no! My queens are out of position and I have no... Surprise, I do have Zerglings! Yeah. Cute little move there by Reynor, and you know what? He got rewarded getting all of the Hellions. Okay. Now these Banshees are awkwardly up in the air. And now you kind of wish as a Zerg that you did decide to go for something more aggressive. But he's still going to be able to... Well, I think if he would have gone for something hyper aggressive right here on the back of it, like some sort of Nidus play, he could probably have already won the game now, but not going to be able to get away with it in this particular instance because he decided to give the Terran here the benefit of the doubt, and obviously you can't really predict that your opponent is just about to donate a whole lot of Hellions to you. So we end up right now with him transitioning towards a Hydra Den together with an Infestation Pit. You know what? Even in the first game, right, we didn't have that comfortable of a match for Reynor. It seemed to me that Clem was just outplaying him. But now we have a situation where Reynor is certainly ahead, and in a straight-up match, he is gonna feel 10 times more confident. What exactly can Terran do right now? Like, what do you have as a Terran player? Well, you have the Banshees, sure. But suddenly, the creep spread. Keep in mind, in game number 1, at the 7-minute mark, the creep was just barely outside of the natural of the Zerg. Now the creep is starting to approach the middle of the map around that same area, right? Like that same time frame. So this is all going a hell of a lot easier, and we have a Hive right now coming up as well. I'm expecting a Lurker Den in just a moment, just to play a nice and comfy follow-up. The Banshees, ooh, one of them misrallied. This one could have also gone down, but the Marines here distracted the Zerg here. Okay. Yep, there's the Lurker Den. So we have a nice macro game here. Curious to see how Reynor is going to approach the macro game, actually. So we've been seeing... Okay, so if we take a step back, right? Like a half year ago, we saw Rogue initially really start building up the Mass Overseer, Mass Nidus Worm style in the late game. And I am a massive fan of it. Clem absolutely hates it. We've had a few instances now where Clem has done a literal keyboard smash. So probably that keyboard that... Oh, actually, that was the previous game that was accidentally set to the English language somehow. I don't know what that means, but anyways. He does not like playing against that Mass Overseer style. And we haven't really seen a lot of Zerg players go for that approach, except for, well, Reynor's teammate. Reynor's teammate, Cyril, has been playing some of that Overseer style, albeit a more conservative version of it, right? Where he goes for like maybe a dozen or so Overseers, and he goes for, well, like 1 or 2 Nidus Worms rather than the Mass Nidus Worm. Either way, I wonder if Reynor is going to be going for something similar as well, assuming this game goes on for a while longer. It's not really something Zerg players do until like maybe minute 15, but it does kind of feel like we are headed in that direction right now, with Zerg just setting up as many bases as possible, and, well, obviously, as we've already discussed, Clem doesn't really die to stupid stuff. There is that first moment, though, when the Lurkers first hit, but the problem with this Lurker Den timing... Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, it was a little bit late. It's a second Lurker Den coming up right now. We really don't need a double Lurker Den in this instance, unless you want to go double upgrades. So that is also an alternative option here for Reynor. Try to hit the opponent in the face with double upgraded Lurkers ASAP. But if we're gonna go for that, then we should have made the first Lurker Den at the appropriate time. Maybe just a misplay? A little bit odd. It's not a cheap structure. Yeah, you would love to have Lurkers out at this point in time, though. Maybe the original plan was to double upgrade now, even though he did delay himself a little bit. But Clem is obviously relentless, once more, ready to move through the center of the map. Lurkers, though, would absolutely shut this down, and they are available right now. Ranged upgrade is seconds away from finishing up. That's the Seismic Spines. And I don't think that Terran can really do anything here. Got a couple of the units on their way out. Yoink. No, we don't even need the yoink. He wants to save his yoink. Okay. Let's see. Planetary Fortress coming up here for Clem, so that's over at the 4th base. As he's moving a pretty large army all the way down south. Trying to maneuver his army around those lurkers too, knowing very well that he can't really fight the lurkers straight up. But you know what? The lurkers cannot really easily reposition, and he is still getting value, man. Most Terran players out there, when they see one spine of the lurker, they're like, well, this attack is over, I'm going home. Clem is like, no, I'm going around the site. It's so obvious when you think about it, but finding the right angle, like you can't scan the entire time and figure out exactly where the lurkers are. Oh my god, he's even pushing in. Bjorn, stop! Yo, somebody get Bjorn off of Clem's keyboard. Okay, well... okay. Yeah, Bjorn does that all the time. I'm always surprised when he does it. It seems really stupid to be stimming Marines into lurkers, but you never really know. Okay, so that slowed down the game a little bit, and I believe it to be in favor, though, of the Terran player, who can now start building up the command center count a little bit. But, of course, the problem here for the Terran is that he had that, well, Hellion moment, and from there, Zerg has been leveraging his way into a perfect late game. Like, if we look right now at the bank, look at this. He's maxed out, he's got, well, about a 5,000, 6,000 resource advantage over the Terran. That's a stupid amount of resources, right? He's got a good number of bases too, although really nothing to write home about. We have a medevac drop. Clem is forced to pull out every antic that he can think of right now to try and even all of this up. But this is a disaster here for the French Terran. I mean, it's weird to call it a disaster because he's maxed out and he can start doing whatever he likes and he's begun building up the command centers. But this is like the perfect setup into a late game for the Zerg. Double Nidus network coming up. Triple Nidus network coming up. Okay. I'm looking at the Overseer numbers, man. This is where Rogue would start building up about 50 of those bad boys. Triple Nidus. I mean, we have figured out that double Nidus is definitely better than one Nidus. So naturally, you would imagine that triple Nidus is better than double Nidus. What about quadruple Nidus? That would be better than triple, right? Just keep making Niduses. Not Nidai. Nice push over here for Clem, though. Trying his best. Oh my god. Clem is so freaking relentless with his aggression. Finally, though, the Zerg is going to try and deal some damage on the other side of the map. This has been a massive problem for him, but we see this time and time again in the matchup. When Zerg players are able to start getting those Nidus worms down, Terrans are forced to go all the way back home, and look at that. Yep, Clem does not want to overstay his welcome. He knows that he can still technically micro right now on the other side of the map, but it's so freaking difficult. Basically, you're spec'd into full damage and you have very little survivability. When the lurkers are in a spot that you're not imagining or the Terran army gets jumped by the Zerg, yeah, it's better to just go home and play Nidus Worm Whack-A-Mole. But obviously this immediately means that, well, Zerg is once more allowed to do whatever they like. Reynor really needs to get that creep spread going again. I know there's a lot to manage at this point in the game, but we really need to be getting those creep tumors out onto the map again. Nidus Worms, though, are being put down wherever possible. The Banshee from the early game actually putting in some work again. Okay, a couple of lurkers do pop out. Nice micro here, though, by Clem. Shuts these down without too much hassle. Overseers are starting to drop some changelings, and would you look at that? I missed it on the production tab, but we do have 9 Overseers. Very interesting. So Rogue goes triple Nidus, 50 Overseers. Serral goes about a dozen Overseers and double Nidus. Reynor is doing the middle of the road approach here, where we do go for triple Overseer, or sorry, triple Nidus, but not as many Overseers. Obviously, this is all just feeling based too, right? It also depends on the state of the game when you make that transition here as a Zerg. But I do find the small differences quite interesting. Even though this game has been around for a decade and a half now. There's still a lot of debate amongst the very best players as to what is actually the appropriate way of getting it done. Now, Clem is getting so much value, though. Yeah, we have had some really effective traits despite these difficult to deal with units. Triple Nidus goes down all over the map. Reynor keeps on dropping them in locations that he knows are going to split the Terran's attention as much as possible. And even though Clem has been shutting them down, Reynor is now allowed to march basically his entire army straight across the map. It's going to be the first time that Clem properly sees what he's dealing with, and I believe that the 5th base is not going to go up at this point in time. There we go. Cancel on the planetary. Okay, some nice abductions there again on the Ghost. Very precise clicking. Let's see. +2 melee coming up for the Zerg player too. Nice addition for the Ling run-bys in particular. So the idea, I guess, for Reynor is mostly just to try and contain the Terran on the amount of bases that they've got. Although I feel like it's pretty much inevitable. Terran is going to get this 5th base up at some point in time. And it's probably going to be sooner rather than later. Command centers are building, though. And we have currently got 5 orbitals. Okay, 5 orbitals, additional command center coming up. I mean, Clem, like I said, very well-rounded player, even though he's known as an aggressor, as somebody who likes to be in your face. He is perfectly capable these days of playing the more passive, the more defensive approach. Playing a gajillion weekly tournaments against other players that like to play a gajillion weekly tournaments, like, for example, Rogue. He's got a ton of experience against this sort of shenanigans from the Zerg. And he's doing so much work. Ay, 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 man. These fights. Very beautifully managed. What about this Nidus in the main? Okay. Needs to be respecting it. The easiest way to clean this up as a Terran, by far, is Liberators. So 4 Liberators right now being produced at once. I really like, though. So Clem, for a little bit, when he was first facing off against these styles, he was rushing up towards the Liberators, and he was getting them going really quickly. He slowed that decision down a little bit. So he's gone for our later extra starport. He should have at least 2 right now, if I were to make a guess. Yeah, he's got 2 starports. But rather than rushing up to them immediately after going to Ghosts, he delays down the transition a little bit, or he slows it down a little bit, and he eventually gets them going. Still, though, it's a very annoying unit composition to deal with here as a Terran player, right? Because those lurkers, they just require so many scans, and they are just going to pop up all over the bases if you're not careful. 11 additional ones coming up. Ghost Academy. Is that the 2nd Ghost Academy? It is. Maybe concerned. Okay, this one is indeed burning down. Just replacing it. You need to be able to continue making ghosts at this phase in the game for sure. Reynor, in the meantime, though, using this newfound freedom, and he set up a couple of bases to his advantage as well. Still not really, spreading the creep all too far. Not really prioritizing any of it. Okay. Any follow-ups here for Reynor? Well, generally, I would imagine you could go into Infestors from here. You could go into Banelings from here. Ultimately, Infestor Broodlord, if we get to like the absolute latest stages of the game, is also an option. But I don't think he really wants to get there at this rate, man. Those Liberators, though. Oh, those Liberators. Nicely done by Clem. He gets a few of those lurkers as they try to move out of the circle's range. You need detection, though, here as a Terran. And detection really is the main requirement, which is why we have so many of those orbital commands currently set up. Nidus Worms, in the meantime, once more going around the site. Ultimately, though, Clem has got this 5th base up and running right now, and he's been really rebuilding some of his production structures in that section, too. Zerg is now staying in these circles for a little bit longer than I would have liked. Only 3 Liberators have died so far, and they have been putting in a ton of work. More orbitals coming up. Another hatchery, though, in the far bottom right as well. And so far, Clem proves to be a very difficult Terran player to break. The fact that Clem has held on against all of these timing attacks from the Zerg, all of the extreme multitasking, look at that. 596 APM as Terran, 573 on average here for the Zerg. A little bit of first-person view. This is what the players were looking at while they were playing the game. Keep in mind that we see these giant indicators, right, on the mini-map as to where the next Nidus Worm is gonna go. The players don't see that. The players just see, like Clem in this instant, he just sees a little red dot appear on the mini-map. That's all he has to go off of. Okay, a little bit of first-person view for the Zerg then. Reynor apparently playing with the Abathur voice back. Could have been the Loco one, but fair enough, we'll forgive him for it. Unloads a bunch of those lurkers inside of the main base, deals with the liberators that are going around. So it's really easy for us to look at those fights in isolation, right? And be like, oh my god, he overstayed his welcome inside of those liberation circles. In reality, Reynor's not even looking at that. Like, he makes the calculated decision to move forward there, but in the meantime, he's not looking at the Hydras shooting down the liberators. Like, he is looking at a gajillion other things that are to be managed at the same time too. And that is one thing that is easily forgotten when you watch the the pro games. Or maybe when you watch somebody cast the pro games. It's very easy to imagine the Zerg player right now is looking at these lurkers. He's not. No, he's not. He may have glanced at them once. Oh my god. Did you see that? He repositioned the lurker by popping it into the worm and then go to... So the planetary wouldn't kill it. That's a cute little move. Tiny plays like that, man. Absolutely brilliant. Reynor, though, is trying to see if he can somehow cut the head off the snake, right? So his goal is to bleed this Terran player out. Clem, 21 minutes into the game, does no longer have minerals in the main. No more minerals in the natural. No more minerals over at the third. The fourth is running dry. This base is absolutely critical for him. Reynor has been relentless trying to shut this down. Clem needs to get more bases going, though, because even just one mineral line is not going to be enough against all of the bases that Zerg is still mining. I mean, it's not like Zerg has a tremendous economy either, but at least he's getting a good bit of change. We do have some of these peaks and valleys in the income advantage, primarily for when Terran decides to spend some of the energy from the orbitals onto mules. So it's a lot of minerals primarily. Clem at this point actually only at 300 minerals, 1800 gas. I think Reynor may just be able to pull this off. You'd never want to count Clem out, though. Like, Clem is still maxed. He's got a whole lot of orbitals. He's got 10 orbital commands available. It's just that Reynor is being absolutely relentless. I think Reynor should go after these rocks. The cooling towers need to go down. The cooling towers destroy half of the mineral field over there of that particular base. Those blue mineral fields can be destroyed. Okay. Looks like we have reached a little bit of time to breathe, which I think serves Clem just fine. It's interesting, right? How basically that Hellion surround at like minute 6 has resulted in this game right here for Clem. It's an entirely different game than he is, well, preferring to play. He doesn't like playing against this sort of thing, but it's been an uphill battle ever since he lost those Hellions at the very start. Reynor just never really letting his foot off the gas ever since grabbing that advantage, although those Zerglings are not achieving much. And none of these traits are cheap for the Zerg either. Yeah, he decides to remake some additional drones. I can't really blame him. He's losing a bunch of economy here too to the harassment still of a Liberator. Fair enough. But while all of this is happening, Clem is mining again. And not that long ago, Clem's mining was down to just like a trickle. It's about a mineral line and a half. So, these cooling towers, I think Reynor should have destroyed them. Either way, he's going to try and move in again. Nice snipe right there on one of those Vipers. Drones in the far bottom right, away from their mineral line. Constant denial of these bases. So, the income advantage, I think Reynor has been, leading similar to this for like the last 20 minutes. Give or take, like for basically the entirety of the game. He's decided to now follow this up with some infestors. Clem is finally dedicating some real army units to this particular base. Oh, good Widow Mine hit there. Also dealing a lot of friendly fire though. Oh, is there enough? Nope, Zerg is not going to be able to kill the two medevacs here as they try to make their way back home. Man, is Clem actually wiggling his way out of this freaking contain? That's so crazy. Not that long ago, he had 4 mineral fields to mine over here, man. That was about it. Now suddenly, okay, maybe a little bit more than 4, but now he's got his third entire mineral line secured. At least he's in the process of it, and I don't think that Zerg knows. Yeah, Reynor hasn't seen it, though he knows there's a sensor tower in that area on the minimap. He can't see those on the minimap through the fog of war like that. He doesn't have to have had vision of it, so it's a bit unfortunate here for the Zerg that he's not sending any units to it, but that's also why Clem is once more being the aggressor. We have an infestor going around the site. Fungal! Oh, he's thinking about it. He's thinking about it. Oh, this could be a huge fungal. Okay, Clem decides to back up. He's actually parked his army on top of an infestor. Still trying to deal with the Nidai inside of the main base. The Niduses. The Nidusi. Here we go. Fungal. Boom, boom. Oh, good EMP. He does get the quick EMP down. We have the Zerg player dashing as many of those units through as well. But that was about the best fight that this army could take in this small section of the map. Clem's army supply count taking a nosedive. Still though, Clem is only at 33 workers, right? And that is one of the big advantages of the Terran. He can supplement his mineral income by dropping down some of those mules, and mules don't cost any supply. Reynor still has 70 supply of his total of 200 dedicated to workers. And it means that his total amount of army is just not that big. That is why the army size has been in favor of the Terran this entire time. Those mules, man. Absolutely essential here for the Terran player. Okay, Reynor decides to just jump this base. Maybe a bit overly ambitious. Okay, decides to back up again as he takes one of the expansions that is normally considered to be the Terrans. Baneling speed, by the way, coming up now for Reynor. Bit of a funky transition to be making, but fair enough. We see a lot of Zergs going into Brute Lords from here instead. I honestly wouldn't have minded him being at Banelings a little bit earlier, but yeah. So the problem with Banelings is that they rarely trade cost effectively, and Banelings are, like, they're 50 minerals, 25 gas each. They're not cheap. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, the fact that mules don't cost any supply is a really nice thing for Terrans at this phase in the game. You just keep dropping them. +3 melee, by the way, also coming up. I'm a little afraid we're gonna see Reynor waste all of his bank, like all of his gas in particular, on Banelings. Technically, it has a lot of potential, but it's not like he's super rich. Nice snipe over here of this expansion, though. It's critical here that Zerg does not get a freebie like that. Sometimes it's easy to forget about the rest of the map, right? If you're a Terran in this spot, it's really easy to accidentally let the Zerg player have one of your bases that you didn't even really think about. Clem has been so busy trying to get these bases up in this section of the map. And he's got it, right? But doesn't mean that Zerg is in the meantime not exploiting your absence on the other side of the map. Okay. We're moving in again. Some good abductions here. Widow Mines sort of just awkwardly get killed, trying to force their way through everything. Fungal, nice fungal here again by Reynor. Absolutely relentless with it. Clemdo has got a very large amount of Ghost here. And he needs to be careful that he doesn't overextend it. He's constantly scanning ahead, trying to make sure that there's no infestor located somewhere that he can't see. +1 air weapons even coming up right now for Clem. Some Widow Mines in these choke points again. I love it. Wow, very nice splits actually by Reynor. Still paying attention to these little things, despite being forced to micro on a lot of different areas of the map. This planetary has been incredible for Clem. Ooh, that choke point as well. Extremely effective. But yeah, this spot over here has really been invaluable. Oh, we have another big fungal. Dang, another big fungal is gonna slow down the retreat of those ghosts. And while the medevac swoops in and picks up 4 of them, that was a very expensive loss for Clem, who is now running out of gas. He no longer has any gas. He's got a little bit of income, but that's about it. Reynor sends in another Nidus Worm. He goes for Banelings right now. This is a weird spot to be transitioning towards Banelings. But you know what? He probably has figured out that it's just gonna be Ghosts and Marines from here on out. So maybe some Marauders in the mix? I mean, Ghosts are not an easy kill for any Zerg unit other than Banelings. So let's see. It does mean, though, that Reynor is going for a very expensive army and one that needs to be replaced immediately. And it's not like Clem's army is small. Like, Clem's army is significant. Oh my god, the Queens. The Queens are joining in as well. Alright, well, valiant effort. Maybe as a distraction, it's working out quite nicely, though, because Zerg, in the meantime, now shuts down one of those important mining bases from the Terran in the far top left. Banelings at this point have been spotted. A little hit squad of units here as well, joining in that Liberator from earlier. They're going to try and see if they could potentially kill a base over here, and this is a big one. Still a bunch of Zerglings all over the map, trying to put in some work. And while the Zerglings are getting here eventually, the base is already gone before the army from the Zerg player can arrive. Good splitties here against those Widow Mines. Medevac picks up whatever it can. Immediately rebuild of the hatch. Okay. Planetary Fortress, though, set up on the final unmined mineral line. And Zerg doesn't have a lot of income anymore. He may have been leading in the income part for the majority of the game, but his minerals have run out. Yeah, there's a little bit of mining remaining over here. There's obviously this one over here, a couple of skinny mineral fields all the way on the left, but he needs to get another base out soon. Accidental Reaper in the late game, fair enough. Reynor's broke. Reynor is absolutely broke. And that's a little bit awkward. Because I feel like it isn't that long ago that I was describing that Clem was stuck on 4 bases. But look at him now. He had a massive amount of difficulty getting this base up and running over here. Forced to replace the location a bunch of times. Leveraged his way towards that base, then towards the top left. And now we are moving towards the expansion that Zerg tried to mine previously. Okay. 16 drones have died as well during all of this, as Clem denied the base in the far bottom right. And I think, yep, slowly but surely we see the Terran player climbing his way up in the income advantage. A little bit of a dip in again, but you know, in the next few minutes, I think it's going to change. Terran is not going to be halted very easily anymore. And what I really like here for Clem is that he's got 2 bases in entirely different sections of the map. So Reynor needs to decide, which one do you take down? No missile turrets here in the mix. That means that these infestors can actually put in a lot of work. Oh man, 1 scan over here could be massive. 1 fungal growth, though, could also likewise be huge. And that's exactly what we're gonna get right now. He does get an EMP on at least one of them. Okay. I think Reynor panicked a little bit. Used it on not the most effective group, but he was also just barely out of range, I believe. Still, Zerg is starting to break through this, but look at the supply count. How does Clem do it? How does Clem do it? Seriously. He was stuck on... Oh, Banelings. Banelings burrowed. Banelings burrowed. Woohoo, not bad. Clem was stuck on 4 bases. Yes, he had additional command centers, but he was stuck against a Zerg player that was on like 7. Reynor had a bank of about 6,000 resources. Clem was flat broke at like 180 supply. And somehow, some way, I mean, it's taken him about 15, maybe 20 minutes, but somehow, some way, Clem has leveraged his way back into this game once more. Incredible cost effectiveness here. Zerg desperately trying to make a shot, but I think he should have gone, instead of Banelings, into Broodlord. Broodlord Infestor seems to be the norm in the late game for good reason. Because these Banelings, they're expensive, and Zerg starts fizzling out right at the point in the game that he made that decision. Wow. What a game. What a series. Yeah. Across the board, Clem is just an absolute monster. Not really running into any problems there whatsoever. Other than, of course, his Hellions getting surrounded in the early game. And the Hellions getting surrounded in the early game basically set all of the other plans in motion. And whereas a lot of the other Zerg players, right, they try to go for that snowball approach too, where they constantly pile on the pressure. Clem said, no. I don't like this avalanche of Zerg. I will just slowly swing momentum again in my favor. Honestly, incredibly well done right there by the Frenchman. A little look at the resources lost in the end. I think this is telling us the full story of the game. Effectively, all bases here are mined, with the exception of the one that Clem just set up. And he has been trading like an absolute god.